Today we're going to be learning about the water cycle and its role on our Earth. We're also going to be learning to perform a small song to help us memorize some of the content in today's lesson. We'll also be talking about the importance that music can play when learning content and trying to memorize a new subject. Here are the standards we're going to be covering in today's lesson. The roles of water in Earth's surface processes. Water is found in the ocean, rivers, lakes, and ponds. Water exists as solid ice and in liquid form. Demonstrate and explain personal interests in, knowledge about, and purpose of varied musical selections. There are three main stages of the water cycle. They are evaporation, condensation, and precipitation. But what do those vocab words mean? Evaporation is when a liquid becomes a gas without forming bubbles inside of the liquid. If the bubbles are formed, we're talking about boiling. So, an example of evaporation is when water is left in a bowl and it slowly disappears, or when there's a puddle on the ground and it dries up. The water evaporates and it turns into water vapor. This is the gas phase of water. But it definitely isn't whenever bubbles start to appear and it gets all hot, like a pot of water on a stove. That is boiling. Here's a couple more examples of what evaporation looks like. This is what the water vapor can look like in the air. Condensation is a process by which a substance changes from a gas state to a liquid state. As the gas cools, it loses heat, or thermal energy. The particles that make up the gas move more slowly. That allows the attractive forces among them to increase, making the water consolidate, or come together. So when that water vapor molecules start to consolidate, that's when the droplets of liquid form. Here's a couple examples of what that can look like. Whenever you have a cold drink, outside of the glass, the coldness of the drink that you have will cool down the air around your cup. And when that happens, the water molecules in the air start to slow down. And remember, whenever the water molecules start to slow down, the water begins to come together. The water vapor consolidates into droplets of water that form outside your glass. Another example that's not really pictured here is a cloud. Whenever water is evaporated and turned into the water vapor, it rises into the air. And whenever it rises into the air, it begins to cool, starting to consolidate or come together to form a cloud. When that water gets too heavy, that's where we get precipitation. Precipitation is the release of water from the sky. It can be liquid or solid, for example, rain, sleet, hail, and snow. Rain begins when droplets of water join together in the clouds until they become too heavy and gravity pulls them down to the earth. Here's some examples of what precipitation can look like. We get rain when it's warm outside, and when it gets cold, the water freezes in the air, and it can be snow, it could be hail, depending on how cold it is or how warm it is. Now we're going to be learning a song to help us memorize the water cycle. This song goes to the tune of She'll Be Coming Round the Mountain. It's important for us to learn a song like this so that we can use this as a tool to help us understand the water cycle and the parts of the water cycle. The song goes like this. Water travels in a cycle, yes it does. Water travels in a cycle, yes it does. It goes up as evaporation, forms a cloud of condensation, comes down as precipitation, yes it does. Woo! Now this time, you're going to sing along with me at home. 1, 2, 3. Water travels in a cycle, yes it does. Water travels in a cycle, yes it does. It goes up as evaporation, forms a cloud of condensation, comes down as precipitation, yes it does. Woo! Let's think more about the individual parts of that song. So, let's think about our parts of the water cycle. First, it goes up as evaporation. Whenever water is already on the ground, like from our lakes and streams and puddles, and it starts to evaporate, it'll go up in the air. Then forms a cloud of condensation. This is when the water vapor starts to come together or consolidate to become a cloud. Once too much water vapor has consolidated and it gets really heavy, what comes next? It comes down as rain or snow, as precipitation. Let's sing this together while just looking at the parts of the water cycle on this graph. 1, 2, 3. Water travels in a cycle, yes it does. Water travels in a cycle, yes it does. It goes up as evaporation, forms a cloud of condensation, comes down as precipitation, yes it does. Woo! Now let's try singing the song again, but this time we're going to take out the words and I will pause for you to answer verbally about which stage of the water cycle fits in each blank. We'll do this a couple times for practice. Now let's sing together. 1, 2, 3. Water travels in a cycle, yes it does. Water travels in a cycle, yes it does. It goes up as... What do you think fits there? Evaporation forms a cloud of... That's right, condensation comes down as... You got it, precipitation, yes it does. Woo! Now let's sing it one more time and talk about each blank as we come to it. 1, 2, 3. Water travels in a cycle, yes it does. Water travels in a cycle, yes it does. It goes up as... What happens when the water goes up? The water vapor rises. What is that called? Evaporation. Forms a cloud of... What happens when it forms a cloud? It consolidates, it comes together. So condensation comes down as... So what happens when it comes down? It rains, it snows, it falls. What is that called? Precipitation. Yes, it does. Woo! Now we're going to sing the song one last time to make sure we've really understood it before we assess if we've really gathered all of our knowledge. All right, sing together. 1, 2, 3. Water travels in a cycle, yes it does. Water travels in a cycle, yes it does. It goes up as evaporation, forms a cloud of condensation, comes down as precipitation, yes it does. Woo! Now we're going to match up parts of the water cycle to the diagram. So, what can we look at first? Condensation. Where do you think that belongs on the graph? Does it belong down here? Does it belong up there? Well, what does condensation do? It consolidates, it comes together. Where does it go when it comes together? Think about your answer and pause and share it with a partner if you have one next to you. When it comes together, it forms a cloud. So I would think that condensation would go up on the cloud for condensation. Next is precipitation. Where do you think precipitation goes on our diagram? Well, when it precipitates, it rains or falls. So I would think that precipitation would go on the rain cloud. Lastly, where does evaporation go on our diagram? Well, what does it mean to evaporate? Evaporation, if we remember, is when the liquid water starts to turn into water droplets. So when it turns into water droplets, where does it go? Pause and share what you think with a partner. The water droplets start to go up into the air in order to form the cloud. So I would think that the place where we need to put the evaporation is next to the up arrow where you see the water droplets going into the air.